I never imagined my life would take such a dramatic turn, but here I am, pouring my heart out after discovering my wife, Jess, was cheating on me. We had been married for 5 years, and while I always thought we had a solid relationship, looking back, there were signs I either ignored or misinterpreted. I guess I was too comfortable, too complacent. Jess had a way of making everything seem perfect, always putting on a show, but deep down, I should have sensed something was off. It started with little things. Jess became more distant, often on her phone, laughing and texting at odd hours. When I asked her about it, she'd brush it off, saying it was just work or her friends. I'd see her getting ready to go out more often, dressed to the nines for even the simplest outings. I remember thinking how beautiful she looked, but I also felt a twinge of doubt. After all, I was the one who used to compliment her daily, but now it felt like I was grasping at straws to keep our connection strong. Then came her birthday party, a big affair she had planned down to the last detail. I thought it would be a celebration of us, of our life together, but it turned out to be the catalyst for everything crashing down. Friends and family filled our house, and Jess was the center of attention as usual. However, as the night went on, I noticed something strange. She was overly animated, almost as if she was trying too hard to impress everyone. It didn't sit right with me, but I dismissed it, telling myself I was just being paranoid. The pivotal moment came when her friends started sharing stories about Jess and her adventures. I didn't think much of it until one of her closest friends, Amanda, made a comment that left me feeling sick. "You know, Jess always gets away with things. Remember when she told us about that guy she met at the gym? She was like, 'I can't believe he wanted to sleep with me.'" The laughter that followed made my stomach churn. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe it. My heart raced as I forced myself to calm down. That night, after everyone left, I confronted her. "What were they talking about, Jess? What guy at the gym?" She laughed it off, waving her hand dismissively, saying it was just a joke. But the way she avoided eye contact told me everything I needed to know. My gut was screaming, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Still, something inside me had shifted. Days passed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. Then, while cleaning out our shared closet, I stumbled across a small, hidden box at the back. Inside were receipts from hotels and restaurants I had never heard of. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she do this to me? I pulled out a receipt from a hotel just 30 minutes away, dated a week before her birthday. My hands trembled as I read through item after item, each one confirming my worst fears. I decided to confront her again. This time I had evidence. I thought I'd approach it calmly, but all that went out the window as soon as I saw her face. "Jess, we need to talk. I found some receipts." My voice cracked, and I saw her face drain of color. She quickly began backpedaling, concocting a story about business trips, a friend in need, and how she didn't want to worry me. The excuses were endless, and I could see the lies spilling out of her mouth like a broken faucet. I wanted to scream, to hurl every accusation at her, but all I could muster was a sense of overwhelming betrayal. The emotional journey was brutal. I felt like I was on a roller coaster of anger, sadness, and disbelief. One moment, I was furious and wanted to throw her out of the house. The next moment, I was heartbroken, reminiscing about our wedding day and all the dreams we shared. I was lost in a sea of pain, grappling with memories of a life I thought I knew. It was hard to fathom that the woman I loved had not only deceived me but had reveled in her betrayal. It felt like my world had shifted beneath my feet, and I had no idea how to find solid ground again. The days that followed were a blur of emotions and sleepless nights. I fluctuated between anger and sorrow, trying to process the reality of what I had discovered. Each time I heard Jess's voice, I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I hated that I was feeling this way, but how could I not? Every laugh, every shared moment now felt tainted, like a cruel joke played on me. I spent hours lying awake, replaying our life together, questioning every moment, every word. Jess, on the other hand, seemed to sense my change. She tried to be loving and attentive, making breakfast, asking how my day was, but all I could think was that it was all a facade. I saw through her attempts to act as if nothing had happened. Her kindness felt hollow and insincere, like a rehearsed script. I could tell she was worried about losing me, but I was equally worried about how deeply her betrayal cut. It felt like a knife twisting in my gut with every smile she flashed my way. One evening, I decided to dig deeper. I couldn't let this slide without knowing the full extent of her deceit. I grabbed my laptop and started researching ways to confirm my suspicions. What I found shocked me. There were countless resources on infidelity, signs to look out for, and stories similar to mine. It felt like I was searching for confirmation that I was right, that Jess had been unfaithful. I was desperate for answers, and I wasn't going to stop until I had them. That night, I found myself looking through her phone. I knew I shouldn't, but I was at my breaking point. I couldn't just sit back and wait for her to come clean. I scrolled through her messages and social media, and there it was, a string of flirty texts with a guy named Mark. Each message was laced with innuendos, plans to meet up, and laughter that I hadn't been part of. It was as if a dam broke inside me. I felt rage bubbling up, mixed with the heartbreak of knowing that while I was home, building our life together, she was getting swept away by someone else. The next morning, I confronted her again, armed with the evidence. I laid her phone on the table between us, the screen lit up with their messages. "Who is Mark?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper, but the tension in the room was palpable. Jess froze, her eyes darting to the phone and then back to me, her expression shifting from surprise to guilt. In a heartbeat, "Please, it's not what you think," she stammered, her voice shaky. "We were just friends, I swear, I didn't mean for it to go this far." The excuses started pouring out, but I had heard them all before. The anger inside me surged as I realized she was trying to downplay the affair as if my pain was insignificant. I couldn't believe the lack of accountability she showed. "Friends? Is that what you call it while you're planning romantic rendezvous?" I shouted, unable to hold back. The hurt I felt transformed into a fierce, protective anger. I felt betrayed not just for myself, but for the love we had once shared. The tears prickled at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wanted her to see the damage she had done. Jess's demeanor shifted as the reality of the situation sank in. She pleaded with me, saying she was sorry and that it was a mistake, but her words felt empty, devoid of any real remorse. All I could think was how she had laughed with her friends about getting away with cheating, while I was the one left in the dark trying to make sense of her lies. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I realized that I had to make a choice to reclaim my own power. I didn't want to become the victim in my own life story. I steeled myself and told her I needed time alone. I didn't know how I could look at her the same way again. I grabbed a few essentials and went to stay at a friend's place, needing space to think. The silence of my friend's apartment was deafening. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, reflecting on everything. It was hard to believe I had spent years building a life with someone who could betray me so completely. I felt a rush of determination. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity and deciding what I wanted moving forward. I wouldn't let her lies define me or our relationship any longer. But the anger simmered beneath the surface, a fire that demanded an outlet. I wanted her to realize the pain she had caused, to understand the gravity of her betrayal. I didn't know how yet, but I was determined to make her feel the impact of her choices. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about respect, loyalty, and the love I had poured into our life together. I needed to find a way to expose her deceit, to confront her with the reality of what she had done, and to show her that betrayal would not go unnoticed. Staying at my friend Eric's place gave me time to think, but it didn't erase the pain. As I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind raced with anger and hurt. I needed to confront Jess again, but this time it wouldn't just be a conversation. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to understand how deeply she had wounded me. It wasn't enough to simply break the silence. I wanted to make a statement. I wanted her to realize that cheating has consequences. After a couple of days, I returned home. It was a surreal experience, walking back into a space that once felt warm and inviting but now felt cold and foreign. I could feel Jess's presence in every corner, but it was tainted by her deceit. As I walked through the door, I found her sitting on the couch, a look of relief washing over her face when she saw me. "I'm so glad you're back," she said, her voice trembling. I could see the guilt in her eyes mixed with a hint of desperation. "Jess, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm. I took a deep breath, ready to lay everything on the table. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't going to be a simple conversation where we could brush things under the rug. I wanted to confront her about her behavior, not just with me but with her friends as well. "I know about Mark, and I want to talk about how you've been bragging to your friends about your infidelity," I added, my gaze steady on her. Her expression shifted to one of disbelief. "What are you talking about? I never bragged." She protested, but I could see the cracks in her facade. "Jess, I heard Amanda talk about how you'd laugh about getting away with things. You think those comments just came out of nowhere?" I pressed, watching her face pale. "How can you even pretend to be innocent?" She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. "No, you don't get to twist this around. I've given you chances to come clean, and all I've gotten are lies." The anger inside me was boiling over, and I wanted to channel that energy into something impactful. "I want you to own this, to confront what you've done," I continued. "And I want you to tell your friends the truth in front of everyone." "What? Are you serious?" she asked, her voice rising in disbelief. "You want me to tell them I cheated?" At my birthday party, the panic in her voice was palpable. She realized I wasn't joking. I nodded, my resolve hardening. "Yes, I want you to expose yourself. I want everyone to know what you've done. It's time you face the music." The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. I could see her mind racing as she tried to calculate the repercussions. "You're being cruel," she said, her tone softening, but I wasn't swayed. "I'm being honest. You've played with my heart, and I will not let you walk away unscathed." For the next few days, I spent time planning how I would execute this revenge. I wanted it to be public and undeniable. I began reaching out to some of our mutual friends, discreetly letting them know about my plans for a gathering at our place. I wanted them to hear Jess's confession firsthand. I felt a mix of apprehension and exhilaration as the day approached. When the day of the gathering finally came, I could hardly contain my nervous energy. Friends arrived, filling our home with laughter and chatter. I watched Jess interact with everyone, her charming personality shining through, but inside I could feel my heart racing. I was anxious yet determined. As the evening wore on and the drinks flowed, I finally gathered everyone in the living room. It was a perfect moment, with everyone in high spirits. Jess was glowing, unaware of the storm that was about to hit her. I took a deep breath and cleared my throat, capturing everyone's attention. "I appreciate everyone coming tonight. There's something important we need to discuss about Jess," I announced, feeling the tension in the room shift. "What are you talking about?" Jess asked, her voice laced with confusion and dread. I glanced at her, seeing the color drain from her face as I continued. "Jess has something she wants to share with all of you, something about her recent adventures that she's kept from me." Her eyes widened in shock, and I could see panic set in. She opened her mouth to protest, but I raised a hand to silence her. "No, Jess. It's time you tell them the truth. Tell them about Mark and how you've been cheating on me." The gasps from our friends echoed through the room, and Jess's face flushed with humiliation. For a moment she stood frozen, unable to form words. Then the floodgates opened and the excuses poured out. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, it just happened." Her voice shook, but the damage was done. I watched as her friends began to question her, the shock settling in. "How could you do this to him?" one of them asked, while another looked on in disbelief. It was painful yet cathartic to witness her unravel, to see her face the consequences of her actions. She was backed into a corner, trying to defend the indefensible, and it felt like justice was finally being served. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about exposing the truth. The humiliation on her face was bittersweet, a mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. I felt a sense of power, but it was also a reminder of what I had lost. I had hoped she would feel remorse, but even now I could see the bitterness in her eyes, the anger she directed at me for forcing her to confront her choices. In that moment, I learned that revenge might not heal, but it provided clarity. I had taken back my power, and it was time for me to decide what I wanted next in my life. No matter what happened after this, I knew I had to focus on my own healing and moving forward. whether that meant rebuilding my life without her or finding a way to navigate the wreckage of our relationship. As the room fell into a stunned silence, Jess's facade crumbled completely. The once charismatic woman everyone adored now stood vulnerable, stripped of her lies and defenses. The reality of her actions washed over her, reflected in the shocked faces of our friends. I could have felt pity for her, but I was too wrapped up in my own tumultuous emotions, pain, anger, and a strange sense of satisfaction. Friends began to express their disbelief, questions flying in every direction. How could you do this to him? One of our mutual friends, Lily, asked, her voice laced with incredulity. I thought you two were happy. I could feel Jess's desperation as she searched for the right words to explain herself, but there was no excuse that could make this better. I was unhappy. She finally blurted out, her voice rising as she tried to defend her choices. I felt trapped. I didn't know how to tell him. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and anger, as if she might lash out at me for forcing her to admit the truth. But I was done being the punching bag. I had given her countless chances, and this was the moment she had to face the consequences. Trapped, I echoed, incredulous. That's your justification. You could have talked to me. You could have sought help. Instead, you chose to deceive me and laugh about it with your friends. The anger bubbled over again, and I felt my heart racing. I wanted her to see how her actions had hurt me, to understand that she hadn't just betrayed me. She had betrayed the love we once shared. The atmosphere turned tense as our friends processed what they had just witnessed. Some exchanged glances, trying to gauge their own feelings about Jess, while others looked at me with sympathy. I felt a mixture of vulnerability and strength as I stood there, unflinching, determined to hold my ground. Eventually, one of Jess's friends, Amanda, who had made the earlier comment about her getting away with it, stepped forward. You made a joke of this, Jess. How could you? Her voice was sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. We all thought you were happy. We assumed you were honest with him. Jess opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. The truth was, she had dug her own grave, and I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of it. I looked around the room, seeing the support from my friends and feeling a rush of gratitude. They were here for me, and they had witnessed everything. Let's not sugarcoat this, I said, turning back to Jess. You've broken my trust beyond repair. Cheating is one thing, but mocking it, laughing about it with friends, that's a whole new level of betrayal. I could see the heat rising to her cheeks, the anger in her eyes battling with guilt and shame. She was losing control of the narrative, and I had taken the reins firmly into my own hands. As the evening dragged on, the atmosphere shifted once more. Some friends began to leave, a few offering awkward reassurances to Jess, but most came to me, expressing their support. We're here for you, man, Eric said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing. You deserve better. His words echoed in my mind, a reminder that amidst the chaos, I had allies who believed in me. Eventually, the gathering dwindled down, leaving Jess and me alone in the remnants of our shattered reality. She sank onto the couch, looking defeated. I can't believe you did this to me, she said, her voice trembling. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. And you embarrassed me by cheating. I shot back, my heart racing. Do you see how twisted that is? You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences. I was done with her manipulation. I could see her trying to regain control, but I wouldn't let her. In the aftermath of that evening, I spent a lot of time reflecting on everything. I still felt deep emotional scars, but I also felt empowered. I had taken a stand and confronted her deceit, but now the question remained, what would I do next? I started thinking about what I wanted for myself and how I could begin the process of moving forward. I reached out to a therapist, someone I could talk to about the emotional roller coaster I had been on. I wanted to understand my feelings and learn how to navigate this new chapter of my life. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. Should I try to salvage our marriage, despite the betrayal, or should I let go of the woman I once loved and begin anew? The days turned into weeks, and I felt the weight of my decision pressing down on me. Jess tried to reach out with apologies, pleading for a second chance, but I remained distant. I needed time to process everything, and I knew that diving headfirst into a reconciliatory conversation would only lead to more hurt. My heart was still raw, and I had to prioritize my own healing. In the following weeks, I found solace in writing. I began journaling, capturing my thoughts and feelings, and slowly I started to rediscover a sense of self I had lost in our marriage. It was a cathartic experience, allowing me to vent my frustrations and confront my emotions head-on. I learned that it was okay to feel anger and sadness, but also to embrace the strength that came from standing up for myself. As I moved through this emotional landscape, I found myself contemplating the possibility of new beginnings. I wasn't ready to jump into a new relationship, but the idea of moving on from Jess, of creating a life that was truly mine again, began to take shape. I started envisioning a future where I could find love again, but this time I would be cautious, aware of the signs and red flags that I had previously ignored. Ultimately, I came to the conclusion that I had to focus on my own happiness and well-being. I realized that the betrayal didn't define me. It was my response to it that would shape the person I was becoming. I was ready to take control of my own narrative, to write the next chapter of my life with strength and resolve. As the weeks went by, I found myself carving out a new routine, one that didn't involve Jess. At first, it felt strange coming home to an empty apartment, but with each passing day, I found solace in my solitude. I immersed myself in work, took up hobbies I had neglected, and even started exercising again. It was a way to reestablish my identity, separate from the woman who had betrayed my trust. I continued seeing my therapist, who encouraged me to explore my feelings while also emphasizing the importance of self-compassion. "It's okay to feel hurt and angry," she said during one session, her voice calm and reassuring. "But don't let those feelings consume you. Use them as fuel for growth." Her words resonated with me, and I began to understand that while Jess's actions had been deeply painful, they didn't have to dictate the course of my life. One evening, as I sat at my kitchen table writing in my journal, I received a text from Jess. It was short and to the point. "Can we talk?" My heart raced as I read her message. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to continue moving forward without looking back. But another part of me felt a strange pull to hear what she had to say. After everything we had been through, I was curious about what she wanted. I decided to meet her at a local cafe, a neutral ground where I could keep my emotions in check. When I arrived, Jess was already sitting at a table, her face a mix of anxiety and resignation. She looked different, as if the weight of her actions had taken a toll on her. As I sat down, the tension between us was palpable, and I felt that familiar knot form in my stomach. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice timid. "I know things are complicated, but I wanted to talk about what happened." I nodded, feeling my defenses rise. I wanted to hear her out, but I was also prepared for the same excuses and justifications I had heard before. "I know I messed up," she continued, her eyes searching mine for a glimmer of understanding. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. I realize now how my choices impacted you and how selfish I was." Those words felt hollow to me, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of skepticism. "You're sorry," I replied flatly. "But the damage is done. What can you possibly say that would change what you did?" "I want to make it right," she insisted, her voice breaking. "I know I can't take back what I did, but I'm willing to work on myself. I've started seeing a therapist too. I want to figure out why I acted the way I did." The vulnerability in her eyes stirred something within me, maybe a flicker of hope, or perhaps just the remnants of the love I once felt. But I had learned too much to let my guard down too quickly. "Jess, it's not just about you fixing yourself. It's about rebuilding trust, and trust takes time. I'm not sure I can ever see you the same way again." Her face fell, and I could see the hurt wash over her. "I understand, and I don't expect everything to go back to how it was," she said, her tone earnest. "But I want you to know that I've been thinking about how I can prove to you that I've changed." I considered her words, but as I sat there, memories of our life together flooded my mind. The laughter, the shared dreams, the warmth we once had. Yet those memories were now tainted by betrayal. "I appreciate that you're willing to seek help, Jess, but the question remains, do you truly understand the impact of your actions?" She looked down, her hands fidgeting on the table. I thought I could keep everything separate, that I could have what I wanted without hurting anyone. I was wrong. I didn't realize how selfish I had become. As she spoke, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me: anger, sorrow, and an odd sense of understanding. This wasn't easy for either of us, and I recognized that she was in a vulnerable place. But I also knew that I had to prioritize my own well-being. This cannot just be about saying sorry and moving on. It's a process, and I need time to figure out what I want. Jess nodded, her expression solemn. I get that. I just want you to know that I'm committed to doing the work, and I hope that someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I wanted to believe her, but the reality was that trust doesn't come easily. Even as I sat across from her, I felt the walls I had built around my heart start to solidify once more. Forgiveness is a long road, Jess. It's not something I can give you right now. The conversation lingered in my mind long after I left the cafe. I realized that while I had taken significant steps to heal, Jess was at the beginning of her journey. I wasn't ready to jump into rebuilding our relationship, but I also wasn't closed off to the idea of reconciliation in the distant future. Over the next few weeks, I focused on maintaining my boundaries. I continued to see my therapist and leaned into my own healing. Jess and I had occasional texts, mostly about logistical matters, but I kept a safe distance emotionally. It was important for me to remain guarded, to protect myself until I was certain about what I wanted. As the months passed, I found clarity. I realized that my journey wasn't just about overcoming the betrayal. It was about understanding what I truly deserved in a relationship. I began to envision a future where I could find love again, love that was built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. One evening, as I sat in my favorite coffee shop, I overheard a couple laughing together, their chemistry palpable. It struck me then how beautiful love could be, free of lies and heartache. I felt a pang of longing, but this time it wasn't for Jess. It was a longing for a connection that was genuine and real, a bond where I wouldn't have to second-guess my partner's fidelity. That realization opened up a new chapter in my healing process. I knew it was time to break free from the chains of my past and embrace the possibilities of the future. I was ready to explore new relationships, to put myself out there again. It would take time, and I would need to remain cautious, but I felt the first stirrings of hope. In the coming weeks, I began to dip my toes back into the dating scene. With each new connection, I was reminded of my worth and the love I deserved. I had learned valuable lessons through this painful experience, and I was determined to take those lessons with me as I moved forward. While my journey with Jess was far from over, I had come to understand that love should never feel like a burden. I was ready to seek out the light, to find someone who would cherish me as I was meant to be cherished. The shadows of betrayal began to fade as I embraced the future, one step at a time. As I continued to navigate the world of dating, I found myself opening up more to new experiences and new people. It felt strange at first, like I was stepping into a foreign land, but with each encounter, I began to feel a renewed sense of self. I was learning to trust again, not just in others but in myself. I realized that I had the power to decide who I let into my life and who I allowed to affect my happiness. Throughout this journey, Jess would occasionally reach out. Sometimes it would be simple texts asking how I was doing. Other times it was more earnest attempts to rekindle a friendship. Each time, I felt a mix of emotions. I was proud of the progress I had made, yet I still felt the weight of what we had lost. I had moments where I longed for the connection we once shared, but I reminded myself that I deserved better. One evening, as I was preparing for a date with someone new, I got a text from Jess that caught me off guard. "Can we meet? I really need to talk," it read. My heart raced as I contemplated her request. Part of me wanted to avoid her altogether. After everything that had happened, there was no need to reopen old wounds. But another part of me recognized that this was a chance for closure. If I was truly going to move forward, I needed to confront the past one last time. We decided to meet at a quiet park, the sun setting in a wash of golden light. When I arrived, Jess was already sitting on a bench, her posture tense, her face a mixture of apprehension and regret. As I approached, I noticed she had tears in her eyes and my heart softened, if only just a little. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice shaking. I didn't know how to reach out, but I felt like I needed to apologize again, this time face to face. I nodded, taking a seat beside her. "It's been a long time, Jess. I've had a lot of time to think." "I understand if you hate me," she said, wiping her eyes. "I've done horrible things. I can't take them back, but I want you to know how deeply sorry I am." I took a deep breath, remembering all the hurt and betrayal. "It's been hard to reconcile everything," I admitted. "But I've learned a lot through this process. I've come to realize that I deserve a love built on trust and respect." Her expression shifted as she looked me in the eyes, vulnerability etched across her face. "I've been working on myself, trying to understand why I did what I did. It was selfish, and I took you for granted. You were always there for me, and I let my insecurities lead me astray. I appreciate that you're doing the work, but I can't go back to how things were. I'm not the same person I was when we first got married." Jess nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know. I just wanted you to know that I see the pain I caused, and I'd do anything to change it. But I also understand that I can't expect you to forgive me, especially not right away." This was a new side of Jess. I could see that she was genuinely remorseful, and for the first time I felt a sense of closure starting to wash over me. "I hope you find happiness, Jess, I really do, but I think it's best for both of us to move on separately," I said gently. "I understand," she replied, her voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I wish things could have been different." We talked for a while longer, sharing memories and reflecting on the good times. It was bittersweet, a reminder of what we had once shared, but also a recognition of how far we had come apart. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was finally letting go of the anger and hurt, and it felt liberating. After our conversation, I walked away knowing that I could fully embrace the future. Jess and I had shared a significant chapter in our lives, but it was time to close that book and start a new one. I felt a sense of freedom as I stepped into a new era, one where I could prioritize my happiness without the shadows of betrayal lingering overhead. In the months that followed, I continued to date and explore new relationships. I found joy in the journey, and while there were bumps along the way, I held on to the lessons I had learned. I was more cautious but also open to the possibilities of love. I discovered that it was possible to love again, even after heartbreak. Each connection taught me something new about myself, about what I wanted and needed in a partner. I learned to communicate better, to be honest about my feelings, and to never settle for anything less than I deserved. I was reclaiming my narrative, and it felt empowering. As I moved forward in my life, I often reflected on the journey of healing and self-discovery. I understood that relationships can be complex, filled with challenges and joys alike. The key was to remain true to myself, to prioritize my emotional health, and to seek out people who would respect and cherish me. Ultimately, I learned that love should not feel like a burden. It should be a partnership built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. I was ready to write my own love story, one where I was the hero, navigating life with an open heart and a spirit unbroken by betrayal.